What if you could turn your passion for helping others into a career that changes lives, starting with your own? Join Empower's Certified Professional Empower Coach Academy, accredited by the ICF and powered by Oregon State University. Our next cohort begins February 28th. Visit yesempower.com to reserve your spot today.
Welcome to Rewired. I'm your host, Tiffany Grimes with Empower Coaching and Training. Today's interview on Rewired is with Lauren Decker. She is a leader, a coach, and an advocate who has transformed her lived experiences into tools for change. After facing challenges such as addiction, severe housing insecurity, single parenthood, and others, she pursued her passion for helping others by becoming a certified alcohol and drug counselor. She shares this moment in the podcast where she said to herself, I didn't go through all of this for nothing, and really moved from the moment of me to we. How do I take this experience in my life to help others transform? Lauren also completed training through us at Empower Coaching and Training at our training academy and is a certified professional coach now. And she's also launched her own coaching practice, so we'll share links to that in the show notes. Today, she also serves as a manager in housing services for her local government in Oregon, where she helps shapes system design with the perspective that only lived experiences can bring and are often the very experiences left behind. Lauren is passionate about guiding individuals to use their own stories as assets and supporting leaders in building workplaces that honor the power of lived experiences. I'm so happy our paths have crossed and really felt inspired by this interview with Lauren. I left with tools that I've used in my own life, but have also introduced in practices in the mindfulness broadcast and other places. So I hope not only that you listen to this podcast, but that you stay tuned and learn how to join the workshop that we'll be doing with Lauren later in November. Hi, Lauren. Welcome to Rewired. I am really happy to have you here. I just shared your bio so everyone knows, but I also just want to say how fun it's been to get to know you. We've known each other for a year, almost exactly. We met at the Working Together conference. You tootled on up to our booth at Empower. And I feel like there was just this yes, I don't know where this is going, but there's something cool that's going to happen. And you've been part of our CPEC program and a successful graduate of that. And I'm so glad that you're here. And we are specifically today, we're going to launch into, I'm sure, lots of different things, but today we want to talk a little bit about this idea of your story, your superpower. And you're teaching a workshop that is coming to us on November 14th through the Empower platform, which we'll talk about, and we'll put lots of links in the show notes. But it's kind of based in this idea of bringing who you are to life and really understanding that all of who we are makes us beautiful and unique, and really building relationships with that. So first of all, welcome. I'm just glad you're here in all senses of that phrase. I am just glad you're here.
Stephanie, I'm so glad to be here.
Excellent. Well, let's just dive right in, because you've worn many hats. You are in the world of public housing. You're a leader. You are a certified professional coach. You are now a workshop facilitator, I'm sure in many ways, but for us, for the first time, which this workshop is Your Story, Your Superpower. What inspired you to start exploring the power of story in your own life and in work?
Thanks for the question, Tiffany. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about this. So I love the power of storytelling, and I'm such a big believer in just like you said, bringing ourselves forth and not hiding. I think that hiding is that's shame, right? So I think a lot of us, most of us, have some really hard things in our background, and that can cause shame, which can cause hiding. And we all have that hard, messy human stuff. And my story includes like addiction, which was very, very hard and very shameful for me for a long time. Parts of my story really disqualified me from participating in so many things that I wanted to do, including the people I wanted to be around. I disqualified myself from the jobs that I wanted to apply for, literally everything. I just didn't think that I was worthy enough because of what had happened in my past. And, I started feeling a shift where I was in a job I didn't love. And I started thinking, I didn't go through all of that for nothing. I went through all of that for a reason, and that reason is to help other people overcome. So I just had that little seed set in me. So I decided to go back to school and become a drug and alcohol counselor, which was it was the best decision of my life, probably because that's when I started to learn about healing, and I learned what shame was. And I learned, Brene Brown is one of my favorite people ever. If you all don't know who she is, I highly recommend looking into her and look up her work on empathy and vulnerability and shame. She's a researcher and she's actually really funny. But I just started realizing that shame keeps us in a place of hiding. And through that work, I became a certified alcohol and drug counselor. And I also became a peer mentor. So I wanted to be able to help other people who were walking through addiction and be somebody who had that lived experience and walk beside them. And I did that for a little while. And then I ended up working for my local government on a hotline for people who were in a housing crisis.
Okay.
And that was really cool. And what I recognized there is that no matter where you're at, if you're in a helping field, you have the power to help people retell their stories and to help people feel comfortable in telling their stories. And as they're telling their stories, just helping them to reshape their stories, even just a little bit. And on this hotline, I would spend probably about 30 minutes talking to folks, most of 30 minutes to an hour. And, people would show up telling me all kinds of things. So they didn't know what to say. They're showing up so vulnerable because they're looking for help. So they'll really tell you anything.
Right.
Going through this is what happened to me. I messed up here. And I would just practice listening and basically saying, wow, what I'm hearing is somebody who really cares about your kid. You really care about stabilizing your life. Like, you care so much that you were willing to reach out today and ask for help. And so that was kind of this cool, like, wow, you can do this.
Completely flipping the script from kind of victim to survivor or warrior, or I love that.
Yeah. And it was really fun. And I would have people actually call me back afterward and be like, hey, thanks for telling me you've heard the strength in me. Thanks for saying that I'm articulate. I've never been told that before. And I was just like, man, this is such powerful work. But also another thing that happened simultaneously is that I was really, really lucky to have the leadership that I did. So I started working on this hotline. I was pretty open about my path. Like, they knew that I was a certified mentor, and I had some leaders pull me into a room with a whiteboard asking me if I would mind sharing my own experience so that they could use my experience to help shape the system. And I remember sitting there and I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm not qualified to be here with this whiteboard, like literally reshaping the system for for housing services. And that was such a key moment for me, to just have people ask me and be curious, and knowing that, like, oh, I'm bringing a strength. This isn't something that I need to hide. This is something I need to bring forth. So that was a key moment for me, Tiffany.
Oh, so good. So much I want to comment on, but I want to take us back to in the very beginning. You said there was this moment where it went from, I was kind of framing it in my head from like me to we, like this is my experience, but actually this is my superpower and I can use this to help other people. What happened there? What was that moment that turned on the light or stopped old messaging, or what happened in that moment? What facilitated that?
I think it was just a combination of a few different things. One, I will say that I was doing the work. I think one thing that I wanted to say up front here is like, it's easy and it's good to talk about our scars, but not our open wounds. And so I think I wanted to say that up front because it's really like it's hard to do this work if you're still bleeding, like if you're still really struggling and you're not in a place where you're feeling that empowerment. I think there's some work that needs to happen before you can get to a place. So I wanted to make that kind of warning.
So good. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it was just like this transformation slowly of like, I'm healing. I can tell my story in a way that will help other people. Like I recognize I'm still healing. It doesn't all just happen like that. But I definitely think that one of those key moments was sitting in that room with that whiteboard and recognizing in the workforce that I can bring my story and I can actually contribute in a way bigger way than I had ever thought.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Ready to make a real difference? Become a certified professional coach with Empower Coaching and Training. Our next CPEC cohort, accredited by the International Coaching Federation and offered in partnership with Oregon State University, starts February 28th. Spots are limited. Learn more at yesempower.com.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was the other part I wanted to reflect on is that is such profound leadership. When we look around and we think, whose voice is missing? And especially in the world of social services, and I'm using that as a broad term, so often we're not listening to the voices of those we're serving. We're making decisions in a back room somewhere based on outcomes that have to happen based on funding sources, and how critical it is to get the voices of people. I love that. What profound leadership was used in that to say, you are the light here. Let's sit down and listen to you and your experience and your pathway. So good.
Yeah. And Tiffany, from there, actually, I had several promotions and I have worked my way to a place where I'm no longer doing that frontline work, but we are at the decision-making table and we're always looking for opportunities to find people who have that lived experience because we know like people who are sitting at the top at the table making decisions, they're far removed from the work and we can't lose that piece.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. And I love that distinction between when we talk about lived experiences, lived might be in the past. I think the emphasis, right? That healing is what you're not living experiences where it's that opened wound, where I'm still in it. I'm still trying to heal this and learn from this and be able to reflect in this and what important distinction that is. So good.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about the storytelling. So you're talking about you're bringing your story to work, but then there's this place that it switches where you're now telling it from this like superpower platform. I've been there. I've experienced this. And when we look at research, it really shows that storytelling activates multiple areas of the brain. I watch my family do this where I'll be telling my kids something and they zone me out, and then grandpa comes in and starts telling the story, which is the same lesson that I'm trying to, cognitively implant in them, and they will lean forward and they're listening and they're emotionally engaged in such a different way. So we've seen this. It just activates all these different brain regions. We see emotion and memory and empathy. And so from your perspective as a coach, how do you see story influencing the way people think and feel and take action? And you've also said in conversation that story isn't just healing, it's strategy. And so I'm curious if you'll talk a little bit about those two things.
Yeah. The first question around like Yeah, as you're telling the story, what's happening. And like the first thing I want to say is like people don't remember numbers. People do remember stories. In coaching specifically, the power of storytelling, I think when I'm partnering with somebody to help them tell their story in a different way, I think that what's happening is that they can stop fighting with their past and they can start partnering with their past. They
Mm,
can look back and say, like, this is something that happened, but it's not necessarily something that happened to me. It's something that can help empower me. And it brings people out of the dark, going back to that shame. Like, I think something that people really struggle with is that, like, this idea that, like, I'm the only one, like, whether it is coming out of an abusive relationship or something else where somebody really messed up in their life and they're carrying the shame from that. I think that people, like, you are not alone. And I think that was one of the other things that I came to realize is like so many people had the same story that I did or similar stories that I did. And I think that when you start sharing and practicing to tell your story, you can update that narrative, right? So it's like, maybe I'll tell a story, like, for example, for me, I'm somebody who as a teen, I had severe undiagnosed depression. I turned to drugs. I started hanging out with all these people who were not good for me. I got pregnant and had my daughter when I was 19. And then I still, after I had her, and then I relapsed and then, continued to struggle with addiction. And so that story can go like, wow, that's somebody who really messed up. Like, how could I do that when I had a child? All of these kind of like victim mentality, victimized by myself, victimized by other people.
right.
And then when you practice taking that story and pulling it apart, reframe it. Like, let's look at that for a moment. That is somebody who was hurting really badly, who was very young and didn't have the tools in her toolbox, who didn't give up. In fact, she had resilience. She was able to find something to help her feel better and help to keep moving. I didn't get bachelor's degree, but I kept going. I finished high school, even though I was experiencing addiction and then I was experiencing teen pregnancy. I finished, like, I can complete something when I put my mind to it, and then I went to treatment. Like, I successfully went through treatment and came out with a whole bunch of tools. And so, like, this is just one example of how a story can turn around from being so bad or so, negative or so victimy to being empowered and hopeful. Like, I know that story gives other people strength that they can pull from.
Yeah.
So that's like the power of storytelling, and wanting to move into your other question around how can we use that as a strategy. And that is, we can change systems with stories, Tiffany. So we can take that, and I have a lot of different examples. I've removed names, but just my experience working on the phone line when somebody's experiencing a housing crisis, you can take those stories, you can help them see their strengths and help them reframe their story. And then you can successfully see a success story of somebody who's coming out the other side. Then you can use that story to help inform our leaders, go talk to our board about it. People want to hear the success stories. And so we're story collectors over here.
Ah, wow. I love that. I mean, you opened up with that kind of flipping the script, and then here you just did it again. And it makes me think, in our coach academy, this, you've done this. We teach listening through a coaching filter. So if I'm listening through, for example, if I'm just listening to my kids talk and I'm maybe feeling stressed for time or less resource, I'm listening for, like, where's the problem so that we can fix it, right? And that's where I jump in and respond. Or if I have a story going that somebody is a problem, or they don't have the skills, or they don't have what it takes to make this happen, then I'm listening for evidence of that as they speak. And what you're doing, what you're exemplifying here, and we can do it with ourselves, is that coaching lens where I'm actively listening for your strengths. I'm actively listening for your excellence. And then I'm just reflecting it back to you. I'm not making up stories. I'm not making light of the situation. I'm telling another truth. Another truth of this is that you have such courage and such resiliency. And so reflecting that back and how rare it is to be given that gift of really having a listener reflect that back in us.
It is
Wow.
rare. You're so right. It's rare. And when you said like we're listening for the problem so that we can solve it, I think that's what a lot of our colleagues and like people who, they're problem fixers. Like they want to jump in, they want to give resources, they just want to fix the problem, which is like so speaks to their heart so much. But if we can change the idea of this person, they have some solutions within them. They actually know themselves a lot better than you know them. They know what they need a lot more than you know what they need.
Yeah.
And if we can start believing that and just start listening for the strengths and helping them reframe their story, oh, there's so much power in that.
Well, and I know you're kind of also coming from the lens of leadership. And if we take the idea of leadership and broaden it out to everyday leaders, the leadership in each of us, maybe it's not even part of our position, but if we just think about a leader in an organization using this tool, we're also empowering our colleagues and our team and staff to use their superpowers, right? Instead of, like you said, I think it comes from such a good place as a leader. I think we have these old mental models that I have to have the answers, I have to fix the problems. And that's a heavy load to carry. And then we all, as leaders, carry these big bags around and like, boom, my bag's really big. And so is yours. Well, I worked all week and me too. And we create this culture of, I hold all the power, right? And so in this, what I love about just this way that we could utilize this tool right away is as leaders, my job is to empower my team. That's my job. And so then I'm listening for their strengths and I'm reflecting that back. And so good. So many ways you can use this. Yeah. So, okay. So then we've got stories. How do we stay grounded in this story when we're sharing it publicly? Because then just even as you're talking, I'm thinking, then are we describing people by just this old narrative, or does the story then become other people's to manipulate? How do we stay grounded and authentic as we start to courageously shine the light in these vulnerable areas in our life? How do we do that?
I love this question so much. I just want to start by saying like this, I want leaders to hear this. I think that we can create a culture of normalizing and valuing stories. And I think that's so important. And I'm really lucky to work in a place like that. And I know that's not true everywhere. So, I'm
going to just ask as a leader, how do you do that? How do you create a culture of stories and normalize it?
I think as a leader, you normalize it by also being vulnerable and sharing your own story. I think that, as a leader, we can sometimes get in this like really guarded place where we're just like, I can't share anything with anyone. I need to be totally professional. Like I won't go, and I think we need to be human and like, we have to model that humanness. Right. And like, if we're struggling, I think it's really important to, maybe you don't overshare, but you're in a meeting with, some folks that you're leading, and maybe you just say like, hey, I just want to be really transparent. I'm kind of struggling with some personal issues. So if I have a weird look on my face or something's going on, I just want you to know I'm just going through something. And like, even in that, like when you hear your leader say something like that, you're like, oh yeah, they struggle too. Like, that's right. We're all humans here.
We're all humans. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I also think if you're brave enough and if you're in a leader position and you're willing. I think there's so much power in sharing your own struggles around mental health or things like that. Like just to normalize, like we all need to take care of our mental health and we all go through mental health challenges. And I'm really, again, lucky to have a leader like that who does that. And it's just been this like amazing transformation of just, normalizing that. And like you get to go to work and not be a robot. You get to go to work and be connected and vulnerable and with other humans.
Yeah, so good. It makes me think about I get to work with some really amazing people at Empower. So I'm surrounded by some really amazing people. But this has been a while ago, but I just I was in a place, I was overwhelmed, feeling so much. And I record a lot, right? So I'm teaching online a lot, which also feels, I'm not hiding in my office. I'm like, hello world, we're recording right now. And so I just felt overwhelmed and I asked for help. So could somebody else teach this? And I remember feeling some level of embarrassment about that. Like it's 15 minutes, it's this mindfulness broadcast. It's 15 minutes. What's wrong with me? And I remember they responded so beautifully, just like, thank you for asking. We're so happy to do that. And it did, I think, it's a little mini example of what you're bringing up, but just this connection that can happen and relationship that can be built and get over ourselves, essentially. That's what I felt like get over myself. What story am I telling that I have to do all of this? That's my story. I'm surrounding myself with excellence. Get out of the way, Tiffany.
Good. I love that.
Yeah.
And just like going back to your question real quick around
yeah, please.
How like, telling our story and like being brave enough to share it. I think it's also just important to mention like being mindful also of what are we sharing our story? So not just being like, look, everybody, like this is what happened to me, and just being oversharing. And so I just want to mention there is a balance. And I think that a really good grounding question we can ask ourselves is like, what am I in service to right now? What's driving this? And is it to create connection or to help somebody not feel so alone? Or is it because I in that place of bleeding and I'm looking for help? Or, is it because I'm maybe needing a little more attention or like whatever that just like checking your reason behind it, I think is also a really important thing to do.
Yes, that's so good. I think about it too. I mean, that could be used for what am I being in service to right now? I think that could just be a question we could put into our daily curiosity. But also, I think about how we might get stuck on the story being our identity and not allow us to fully evolve into this next season or next phase of who we are. So if we keep coming back to this same story, I think what you're saying is really important. Maybe I need to revisit what's undone here. What lesson is there still to be learned? How do I keep this as a part of me and not all of me?
Yeah, I love it. And I also think one more thing to add to that is focusing not just on pain points of your story, but also like making sure that we're sharing the story from a healed place of like, I went through this really hard thing. Here are some things that really helped me. And this is what helped me. Like, here's some of my own strengths that helped me move through this. Like, I think that's also where it becomes really impactful is when you can take your story and tell it from a place of strength, not from pain.
Yeah. 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 Back to that place of making sure it's healed when we start to share. Yeah. Other people are poking at it. So you're in this unique position you've shared. You kind of were in a place of receiving services and then helping to lead these services. I think those whiteboard moments and the work you're doing now, and as a certified professional coach. So bringing coaching into systems that often focus on compliance and outcomes. Did people gain employment? Did people secure safe housing? Did the kids attend school? Those types of things. How do you see storytelling helping professionals? I think of social services, case managers, leaders in these worlds. How can that help connect deeply to clients and really with our own purpose? Why we got these jobs in the first place?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Ready to level up how you lead at work and at home? Empower Coaching and Training brings brain-based coaching, mindfulness tools, and real-world strategies you can share with those you serve and live with. Get started now. Visit us at yesempower.com.
Yeah, I already talked a little bit about the phone line, and I talked about, when somebody calls a government phone line for help, they're probably not expecting compassion and like to feel a little more empowered when they hang up the phone. I think that people, when they seek services, they're showing up from a place many times of, I'm sorry, I have to ask for help. This is really shameful. I'm the client and you're the person who has all your stuff together, which is not true. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I think in terms of connecting with people and I think the focus is really on helping them to tell their story, because of course we're needing to do assessments or we're needing to gather information about what's going on with them. And I think we can implement the strength building into any of that. We can take an assessment, and throughout the assessment, we can be pointing out strengths and values and resources that this person holds. Right. So it's not just like, you're not just taking your checklist of questions and just asking the questions and they're just kind of waiting to get through that, trying to get through it as quickly as possible. You can take that assessment or that form or whatever it is, and you can implement little gems, little gifts into their life. And I think, coming from a person who used to seek a lot of services, I had help in the workforce world. I had help. I was on TANF and I was on food stamps, and I utilized all different kinds of programs. And I remember feeling so small, and I just hated being there. I hated having to be in like this helpy role all of the time. But I do remember very well the moments where people would help me see something in myself that I couldn't see. Like if somebody said something like, wow, I see a lot of potential in you, whether that was a teacher or a case manager or whatever, because I was in such a place of deficiency of self-worth, I was like, what? You see something in me? Like, okay. And then I would take that and I would run on that, so I think that's the other message I'd love for listeners to hear is like, you can make a huge difference when you do this work and help people to tell their stories and pull those things out of their stories that maybe they're not seeing. I think the other thing is like, people are in this downward spiral a lot of the time. Like when you're in crises and like you've lost a job or you can't pay your rent, your brain is not your friend. You know this as a neuroscience.
Right. Yes.
Your brain starts seeing threats. Your brain starts seeing all of the negative things that are happening, but it's not remembering your resources and your strengths and your values. You're not in that place. And so partnering with somebody who can help you see those things, you can actually reverse that downward spiral. So that's something I get so excited about and like love in this work so much. It's like, we get to, if we're in a healed place, we get to help intervene and turn that downward spiral around.
Yes.
Just by being strengths-based.
Oh, yeah. So many ways. You know what it made me think about is a while ago, I became a certified practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming. And I didn't resonate with all of NLP, but there were pieces of it that I really loved. And one of the pieces I would utilize in coaching specifically, but in some of the leadership roles I've had I'm going to mess up all the details of it, but essentially you're having a person visualize like you're on a stage. How big is that stage? What are the lights like? What colors are, the crowd is looking at you. The lights are on you. You could be at a rock concert. You could be giving a TED talk, whatever it is for you, your power stage. And so somebody's has that as a resource at any moment. So like step on your stage. If you step on your stage and you're talking about this challenge, what differs? What power do you have? What tools can you utilize? And just continuing to come back to this place. And even in these little minuscule ways where maybe we don't have any relationship, we've just picked up the phone, we don't know the person on the other end, we just know they're in need. it made me think about how can I use this phone call not just to have that be a stage of need, not just to highlight and hear need and lack, but also create this little stage. And maybe it's, I'm not doing it as a NLP based practice, but just in my head, I'm also building this stage of here's where there's strength and here's where there's resource. And I'm reflecting on that. And I'm also shining the light and maybe even getting it brighter over here in just these little ways that we can learn to do. It's so good. I love how you're framing this.
Yes, I love that so much. I love visualization, and like the power of our mind is so big. And if we can learn to, if we can learn to tap into that executive functioning of our brain and to like recognize, okay, my brain is playing a trick on me. Like my brain is doing what it's supposed to be doing by keeping me alive, but I'm not in that place of needing to stay alive. And like if we can train through mindfulness and coaching, I think coaching is huge because I would say that's one of the best reasons to probably work with a coach is to help with that mindset change. And because we all need help with that, And so, but I love the visualization and I love the idea of like, picture yourself well-resourced. And I think especially for people who have a history of poverty, we get so stuck with that poverty mindset.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the practices I'll do with participants sometimes is just, pulling up a piece of paper and starting to write down like, okay, let's pause for a minute. What resources do you have right now? Like who do you talk to when something's going wrong? Who are your people?
Yeah.
What areas are you familiar with? Where, like, what agencies are you working with? Like, and so, I think sometimes people don't see their case manager or if they have like a CPS case, they don't see that as like a resource. They see that as a huge threat. And if we can help our minds turn that around a little bit and maybe try to see it as a resource, it just changes the way we think about everything.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. So I'm hearing, your own story evolving and evolved through many things, through your relationships that you've had, through the positions you've held, but also through becoming a professional coach. What identity shifts did you experience in your CPEC journey that helped you really kind of see yourself? You've talked about how transformative that experience was for you and to see others differently.
Oh yeah. I think like the reiterate, like going through CPEC training and stepping into this coaching role has just made me fully wear the hat. Like it reiterated so much that such powerful work. Just making space for people is so powerful. And just making space and helping them tell their story and to reflect all of the strengths that we've been talking about. I think like it's so powerful. And I think going through this coaching training has really helped me just know that, like, I know that that is true.
Yeah, that's so great.
I don't know. I think it's just, like in the training, it was so fun to like partner up with peers and like we got coached by each other a lot and like receiving coaching and practicing coach other people every single time. It reiterated this, like, it's so powerful. It's not a lot of pressure, honestly, because if you're feeling the pressure, you're not doing it right. Like you actually get to take that weight off of your shoulders and just create the space and help the person kind of work through whatever is whatever's getting them stuck. And so that has really shaped my identity of just being like, I am a helper. I am a coach. And yeah, I think like I think another thing is just knowing that everybody's also different. So I think CPEC also really helped me differentiate between like somebody who is a really good candidate for coaching versus maybe somebody who is needing therapy or something different. And so I love being able to like, help explore that with them and then get them connected to resources.
Yeah. Yes, 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 yes. Awesome. And you have a website. People can get coached with you now, correct? So we'll make sure to link all of that in the show notes. What is the name of your website and your coaching business?
You can go to lauren-decker.com and you'll see a lot about my strengths-based coaching. I mean, yes, I am available to coach and I am still developing. I think it's grit and grace coaching. And I love that because I think it does take grit. Like it takes so much hard work, Tiffany, to like keep doing the scary things, like keep stepping into the role, keep telling your story, be brave. And so that does take the grit. And also, I think we need to give ourselves grace and like take a breath and really make sure we're doing that mindfulness practice.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's so much work to keep stepping up and showing up for yourself, for sure. Yeah. And speaking of which, speaking of grit and grace and coaching and showing up, let's talk about some tools. So if listeners are kind of leaning into this and thinking, yeah, I want to do more of this, I want to tell my story and make it my superpower. So in your experience working with clients, what helps people move from feeling stuck in their story to really owning it with power and purpose? And then I'm going to tack this other question on because specific to leaders in systems work, and we social services and housing and workforce and all of those things, how can we make space for lived experiences without tokenizing it? And you've talked a little bit about that, but maybe get more specific.
Yeah, for sure. What helps people move from feeling stuck in their story to owning their story with power and purpose? One thing that we can do is make a list of some of the challenges that we've been through in our lives. What are some of the hardest times of our life? And then look at your list and circle one that feels empowering, like something that maybe made you stronger, and write your story out. And as you write that out, look for strengths, look for values, and look for resources. And I think that can really help change our brains.
I want to pause and capture that for listeners. So what you're suggesting is make a list of here are the struggles. And maybe there's one just glaring one, and we're just going to go towards that. And write out the story and then reread it and really look as you're doing that. Where did my values show up here? Where are the strengths that I'm seeing? Where is the grace? Where is the grit? And really putting on like a new set of lenses, really specifically. And are we highlighting those as we see them? Are we circling them? How are we identifying those?
Yeah, I would say go through, and maybe your first version doesn't have a lot of that, so you might need to rewrite it with that lens, right? So put on your cape, put on your superpower cape, and go rewrite it, but through the lens of when I was going through this, what were my values? And even if my behavior wasn't fully aligned with my values, what was really important to me at that time? And maybe that's what was causing so much friction, is that like I had these values and I wasn't aligned with those things. And then also what were my strengths? And a lot of times that's going to be resiliency. I think people can typically look back and be like, I kept going. And like even that in itself is just like, man, it's so amazing that, you didn't give up. But yeah, so, write in the strengths. Maybe you kept working even though you were tired or sick and you kept moving through that. Maybe you reached out for help. So you can put that like a strength is I reach out for help when I need it, like in your story, right? And then resources, like who were the people who helped me? Or what were the organizations that helped me? Or what else helped me? And think about like those were the things that helped me turn this around, and I've made it to the other side. And practice retelling that story from a different lens instead of like, this thing happened to me, it was so hard, oh my gosh, that was so hard. Maybe you can retell the story of like, yeah, this thing happened, I implemented my strengths and I stuck with my values and I kept moving and I made it to the other side. And maybe I can help somebody with that story now.
So great. You know what it makes me think of is, did you ever listen to The Moth, the podcast,
Yes.
The Moth? I did that. I've had, many things in my life, of course, but there was a major thing in my life that I would point to as like, this was this major season of adversity. And I did the moth years later when it was healed over. I was not still bleeding. I healed it over. And then the moth is, you're limited. I forget, it's like 10 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that. And so I had to write my story in its entirety. And then that was 25 minutes. So then I had to cut out all this stuff and then think about, how do I want to tell the story? What theme do I want? Anyway, and then you have to memorize it because you can't have notes. And it was so transformative for me. It's exactly what you were talking about, except that I also then had to memorize it and get it down to my elevator speech, which was, that this was the adversity. Here was my experience, and here's my resiliency, and here's how I grew, and here's how it actually benefited me in my life and made me stronger. And I love that. I love what you're doing. So people could also even go a step further and bring it into like pretend or sign up for the moth or the lantern or whatever it is and see if you can memorize this beautiful little story of resiliency.
That's amazing that you did that. And I'm definitely going to have to find that podcast or that recording.
It was local and live. There's no recording of it.
Okay.
But the moth is, obviously a great podcast and
yes,
would point.
And I'll just say, like, with that story that you shared, who knows what impacts that had on other people? I think that our stories really, people remember it and people think, well, if she did that, maybe I can do that. And you do have a ripple effect. So
we all do. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, we're coming upon an hour, and I want to make sure that I let people know that if you are loving listening to Lauren like I am, you can go work with her, and B, you can also come to the workshop on November 14th. The cost is $35. We work hard to make it as accessible as possible. It's virtual. It will be live virtual. So I'm sure you'll have time to ask questions. Lauren's going to lead us through some discussions and some activities. And also we have promo codes. So if you need a sliding scale, we are happy to offer that. So we will drop all of that in the show notes. I do want to leave us with one question for you, Lauren, if you will take us out with this. So if someone listening feels disconnected from their story, so maybe they're curious, but they're starting to feel still feeling disconnected, maybe even ashamed of parts of it, what's one first step you'd encourage them to take to start seeing their story as, like we've talked about so much, the source of strength and meaning? And maybe wrapped in there, I know I keep kind of bringing in these messages for leaders and professionals. What advice do you have to use their story appropriately in the workplace?
Good. Great question. I would say, Tiffany, if somebody is struggling with feeling connected to their story and like sharing their story, I just will say, I know it feels so scary and I want to normalize that also. And I also just want to say that you are not alone. I think that we just get stuck in this place of thinking that like this is the only I'm the only one who's ever been through this. I would say one small step folks can take is go check out Brene Brown's work on shame versus guilt and on empathy and vulnerability. I think that was so eye-opening for me. I don't know if it will have the same impact on other people. But learn about that. Learn about what's making you hide. Why is that having such an impact on you? And again, just wanting to normalize that there's nothing wrong with you if you're feeling like that. And when you can get to the other side of that, it's so freeing. Like I feel like when I went to treatment when I was in my 20s, somebody had used the term secrets make you sick. Like if you're holding something in to yourself like that, it's probably making you sick in a lot of different ways. So you just start feeling like such a lighter person. And I also want to make sure people continue to feel safe. And so what I would also suggest is find a safe person to practice with. And that might be a therapist. It could be a friend, but practice telling your story. And maybe it is from a place of pain, and keep that safe. If you are sharing from a place of pain, keep that private and keep trying to practice telling it from a place of strength, and you will get there. And so I would just encourage, like, you don't have to carry this all. You're not alone. And there's so much light on the other side if you can tell your story, if you can get there. In terms of telling it, using it appropriately in the workplace, look for opportunities when people are looking for folks who are willing to share their lived experience. So like if you have lived experience of addiction or homelessness or, something hard like that, there's always panels seeking folks to bring them to the table. Otherwise, maybe start with your boss and say like, hey, I've been I've been thinking about this and I feel like I could contribute. If there's opportunities for you to contribute, let your boss know what your story is and say like, I would love to, if you find any opportunities, I'd love to start sharing my story. But yeah, also I think just a side note, not being careful to not just like overshare everywhere, and just like knowing the intention behind why you're sharing.
Exactly. Yeah. What is this in service to? I love that question.
Okay.
So good. And there, so many ways to start. If you're listening to Lauren and feeling like, ooh, I don't know that I could have the conversation. I think that step that you gave us of write the story, write it. Start with you. Start by having the conversation with you, whether that's in writing or talking out loud while you're driving or whatever it is. Start telling the story, even if you're the only one listening.
Totally. Yeah. And I just want real quick, I want to say, if you or someone is struggling in crises, that help is available, and a starting place can be just by dialing 988. Like if you are still in that severe pain point and you don't know who to talk to, I think that can be a really good starting place.
And say that again, dialing which?
988.
988. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Lauren, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for coming and sharing your story with us today and in November, and starting a business where you get to shine that light with other people. And we need more of that. More of you, Lauren.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show, Tiffany.
Thanks so much. All right. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Rewired, where neuroscience meets real life change. If you enjoyed today's conversation, I'd be so grateful if you take a moment to leave a 5-star review. Your feedback helps people discover the tools, insights, and inspirations they need to create lasting change. While you're leaving that 5-star review, please also subscribe and share an episode with a friend. Remember, the way you think shapes the way you live. Every intentional thought, every mindful choice rewires your brain and your life. So go live intentionally, live thoughtfully, and never underestimate the power of your own mind to transform your world. Until next time, this is Tiffany with Empower Coaching and Training. Stay curious, stay empowered, and keep rewiring for real change.
Every family has challenges, and every parent deserves support. At Empower Coaching and Training, youth and parenting coach Jasmine Chandler helps parents and young people find clarity, connection, and practical tools that make a difference. Visit yesempower.com to connect with Jasmine and explore our team of incredible coaches today.